Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. Another edition of This Week in Master Duel, as a matter of fact. And we actually have quite a bit to talk about from this week. In fact, a lot of it was from just the past couple of days here. We have a new ban list to go over, so we're going to go over that here in the client first. After that, I actually decided to take to Twitter earlier today and ask a bunch of you all over there what you think of the ban list as well. Wanted to get some extra insight in. I might start doing this moving forward with ban lists and potentially some other news or releases, just so that we're hearing more sides and not just, hearing me blab all the time, right? Well, I'll still be blabbing because I'll be reading them out loud, but anyway, you know what I mean. After that, we're going to take a look at the Duelist Cup top 100 decks that have been submitted so far. I think this is going to be very good to do after we look at the ban list, because that will definitely influence, or rather, we'll definitely get to see how the decks influence the ban list there. And then after that, at the end, we're going to look at Untapped and see some of the ranked ladder stats. And Untapped actually has some new features that they have recently rolled out, and even more that have yet to be rolled out. So definitely going to be looking forward to checking that out. If you're ever at all interested, by the way, in the Untapped companion and seeing all those stats and seeing your own personal stats, definitely going to want to check out the description below. You can find my affiliate link. It's free to download, and it also supports the channel by doing so. So thank you very much for those of you who have. But anyway, let's start by going here to the in-game notifications. And although I haven't clicked on this yet, I have definitely seen the list already. So I'm going to read out all the cards that were banned, then I'm going to go through them one at a time, tell you my opinion on each, and then after that, like I said, we're going to see some of the opinions of you all over on Twitter. So, cards to be limited. Performapal 5 Rainbow Magician. For those who aren't familiar with it by name, that is the pendulum monster that Lab and Brandon would play that is basically a floodgate, unless you control a set spell or trap card, I believe, right? So, that's the only card being limited. No cards getting banned here. Cards to be semi-limited: Super Heavy Samurai Wagon, Nadir Servant, Cashira Unicorn, and Cashira Birth. Cards for which the limit on the number will be lifted, so these cards are going to 3: Armageddonite and Pearly Pretty Memory. So let's start at the top with Performapal 5 Rainbow Magician. So when it comes to this card, I don't really have any particularly strong feelings either way about it being limited. This card, as I touched on before, was used in both Branded and Lab. Not the only card that both of those decks use that was hit here. We'll talk about the other one here in a moment. But when it comes to Performapal 5 Rainbow Magician, I'm like, it's fine if it goes to 1. Like, I don't think this card was a huge issue. Like, I don't think it was, like, so stupidly overpowered it had to get limited. It was just a minor, again, floodgate option that some Branded and Lab decks use more often than Tournament and Ladder, or Duelist Cup than Ladder, from what I've seen. I do definitely think there's a difference between Duelist Cup and Ladder, because although it does play out like Ranked Ladder as far as like how you go about queuing up for games, Duelist Cup, every single game counts, and you gotta win every single duel. So I think that decks are definitely going to be built and optimized differently for that. Same with tournaments, again, as well. Yeah, I think this is fine for this card to go to 1. I don't think it had to, but I think it's fine. I don't really have any strong feelings about it. Super Heavy Samurai Wagon. You know, a lot of people have been kind of laughing about this one, or saying that it was a bad hit. And when I first saw this too, of course, my first thought, I'm sure like everybody else was, okay, but why not Soul Piercer to 1? But then I started thinking about it a little bit, and I don't know. I kind of wonder, how badly does Super Heavy Samurai even need to be hit, right? As far as like the kind of standard variants where, you're just kind of like comboing on turn 1. Now, when it comes to FCKing and Calamity Locking, even though those variants aren't good as good as a standard Super Heavy Samurai variant, I think those should be addressed, right? But I think we could even do that without having to hit Super Heavy Samurai cards. Like, kind of think we should just ban Calamity and Dark Strike Fighter. But as far as like Super Heavy Samurai itself goes, again, I see this hit, I'm like, lol. But I think it's important to expand upon hits like this, right? And really think about it. Because I think everybody else was like, lol, Konami useless semi-limit. But then I'm like, okay, let me actually think beyond the meme for a moment. Let's critically evaluate, what is the reason to semi-limit Wagon and not limit Soul Piercer? Because a lot of the times when they semi-limit, people are like, oh, they're doing it to avoid hitting URs. But here, the card to hit Soul Piercer is definitely not a UR, it's just a rare. I kind of think that maybe Konami has this opinion, and I don't even know if I disagree with them, if this isn't being true, that Super Heavy Samurai in the current Master Duel meta isn't so big a threat that it needs to be curbed that hard, as in hard enough as putting Soul Piercer to 1. And I think one thing that's pretty interesting about the current Master Duel meta is that Snake Eye, while being the best deck to play, I'll say by far, it's by far the top tier 1 deck, let me say that. I don't think it's tier 0 though, and I think a lot of people agree with me. I know some people disagree, and of course it's obviously fine, but I think a lot of people will agree that Master Duel, Snake Eye, that variant in particular, while by far the best tier 1 deck, is not tier 0. And I kind of can't help but wonder, of course, a lot of the reason for that, obviously, is because we don't have Bonfire or the Fire King cards. But I also can't help but wonder if it's because of how many other decks are hit in the OCG. I'm thinking mostly of the OCG here, comparing that to Master Duel's ban list. When Fire King came out, I mean, I'm pretty sure when when Snake Eye came out, Circular was already at 1, Soul Piercer was already at 1, right? So it makes me wonder, like, is part of the reason that we're not seeing Snake Eye have as much dominance in Master Duel, aside from not having, again, Bonfire and the Fire King support, could it possibly be because decks like Mathmech are still viable because of 3 Circular, or Super Heavy Samurai being viable because Soul Piercer isn't at 1? Maybe Konami is semi-limiting Wagon to keep other decks viable in a meta like this. That's just my theory as to why they would not limit Soul Piercer and semi-limit Wagon instead. Again, it's really easy to write this off as like, lol, Konami's dumb, but I think there is some validity to this. I don't know if I necessarily think this was a great hit. Maybe Soul Piercer does just need to go to 1 anyway, but I don't think this is as bad of a hit as people say. Is it a great hit? No. Is it an awful hit? I also think the answer to that question is no. Nadira Servant to 2, this card has been on quite the roller coaster ride since its release in Master Duel, right? It started at 1 and was at 1 for a long time, then finally went up to 2, and then up to 3 relatively recently, now going back down to 2. This is the other card I was touching upon earlier that was in both Branded and Lab, also saw use in Stun and, of course, Dogmatica decks, right? I think this hit is whatever, like, I guess it makes sense if you want to hit the consistency of both Branded and Lab very minorly, and I think very minorly is the way to do it, because I don't think Branded and Lab are, like, so oppressively strong that they need to be, like, gutted or neutered or anything, you know? It's like, I think it's fine where it is right now. And I think the Dear Servant being semi-limited is, like, just minor enough of a consistency hit to both decks that I think it's fine, right? It makes me wonder if either deck will continue to use Nadir Servant as a package moving forward, because funnily enough, when Nadir Servant was at 2 before, you didn't see it quite as often as when Nadir Servant went to 3 in Branded or Lab. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that engine sticks in those decks or not. Casio, Unicorn, and Birth, I'm going to kind of lump into one a little bit here, but I do think that these hits do have some different implications as well. So one thing that's pretty noticeably absent from the list, which I think is a given, right, is there's no real Snake Eye hits, right, which makes sense. The deck is still in the shop. It's still relatively new to the game. I can understand why Konami doesn't want to hit cards from it just yet. I do think the deck does need to be hit in some capacity, absolutely, but I also completely understand why those cards are not being hit. I think Cashier Unicorn to 2 is actually kind of a Snake Eye hit, first and foremost, because as we're going to see when we look at the top 100 Duelist Cup decks, from what I remember observing, literally every Snake Eye deck was on the Cashier package, which makes sense to me for the Duelist Cup. And again, we'll talk about that when we look at those lists here. But it's not just Snake Eye, right? It's also Vanquish Soul, sometimes Lab, lots of other decks. Speedroid is another one. Lots of decks pick up the Cashier package with Unicorn, like 1 Fenrir, 3 Unicorn, 1 Birth, 1 Wraitsoth, sometimes not even playing the Fenrir or Wraitsoth. It's pretty easy to just, you know, summon Unicorn, not even using your normal, just Special Unicorn as your first action, add the Birth, use Unicorn as a material, bring it back with the Birth, and then now you have another material and or an extra deck snipe for your opponent on their turn, right? So it makes sense why Cashier Unicorn was being splashed into so many decks, pretty similarly to the way Fenrir was. So in that regard, I think Semi-Limit Unicorn makes sense. It's a little unfortunate for Kashtira, because while Kashtira is a very good deck, I don't think they needed Unicorn to go to 2. Like, I don't think that it was so good that Unicorn had to get hit, right? I've seen people say that. I've seen people say that, like, oh, thank God they put Unicorn to 2 to curb Kashtira a bit. And it's like, Kashtira's totally fine. Like, I don't think the deck needs to get hit in Master Duel. With Fenrir, Ratesoth, and Prosperity at 1, I think that's all completely fine, right? Like, I still, to this day, see people calling for a Rise Heart to get banned in Master Duel, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It's completely fine. So Birth to 2, this actually, I think, is a pretty good sign overall. Not the ban list as a whole, but rather that we're seeing Birth go to 2 at the same time as Unicorn. It does show that Konami is willing to, like, unhit a card for a deck at the same time they hit a card for the deck. So I think this is Konami realizing that, like, hey, if we just put Cash Unicorn to 2, while that does stop it from being as consistently used as an engine outside of Cash, it really does suck for actual Kashtira decks. So I think giving a second Birth, because, like, I don't think any deck that's using Kashtira as an engine would play a second to Birth anyway. I think they would still only play the 1. The second to Birth is definitely for Kashtira. And I think this is pretty encouraging to see, right? Because this isn't something that I would have expected from Konami. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. And I know, I'm sure there's going to be comments that are like, no, Kashtira sucks, it should stay hit. And it's like, whatever, it's fine. Like, there's a difference. I can't believe this is a hot take, but this is actually a hot take to some people. You hating a deck is not a reason for it to get hit. I can't believe that we're still having this conversation. And in fact, Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG is the only card game I've ever played where that were declaring that statement I felt to be necessary. And not only is it necessary, but it's still challenged, which floors me. Yeah, you're welcome to hate Kashtira, you're welcome to hate Runic, you're welcome to hate any other deck out there, but though that is not in and of itself a reason for the deck to get hit. So, alright, as far as cards which are being unlimited, Armageddonite, whew, this is a spicy one. There's a lot you can cook up with Armageddonite at 3. It was at 1, I believe, before, so 1 to 3 is a pretty big jump. It's pretty useful for a lot of dark pile decks, and my first thought when I saw not just Armageddonite on the list, but this ban list as a whole, I saw Armageddonite to 3, and I was like, oh, that's a huge boost for Gate Guardian, so... Gate Guardian deck profile again next season, I'll probably have to come back to it with Armageddonite being at 3. That's a pretty big boost for that deck. Yeah, that's a fun unlimit. I'm really glad to see that there. I'm also very, very glad to see Pretty Memory, getting unlimited. That's huge, and also, thank God they did. I think Konami hit Pearly way too hard, like, especially compared to the power level of decks that came relatively shortly afterward. It's like, I think Pearly could have existed with... Well, it's interesting, right? Because Pearly got hit hard because of its representation on earlier Duelist Cups, and now here on a Duelist Cup ban list, we're seeing it get unlimited a bit. Yeah, no, Pretty Memory to 3 is such a duh unhit. I kind of don't know why he got put to 2 in the first place. What other cards does Pearly have hit right now? Delicious at 1, that's fine. Delicious can stay at 1. And Pearly, as in Pearly the Monster, at 2. That one should probably just be back at 3, right? Like, I don't even think, like, but the Ghost Trick build, it's fine, whatever, who gives a shit? Like, is Ghost Trick Pearly really gonna be so bad as opposed to, like, everything else that's running around right now, namely Snake Eye? I don't think it would be. So, I think they hit Pearly too hard, too fast. And I think that's what, it's very easy for that to happen, right? Like, a lot of people, again, calling for, like, Math Mech Circular to 1, Soul Piercer to 1, which I don't think those are terrible hits, but, like, again, thinking about what we were talking about earlier, if we hit a bunch of the current decks that aren't in the shop right now, that's just going to propagate Snake Eye being tier 0, which is, I know, what a lot of people don't want. I think a lot of people don't consider that, like, hey, if you go around hitting, like, a bunch of stuff, then that could very easily elevate one deck to just absolutely being unchallenged the best, the same way that Tier Limit was. And that's another thing I have to say to people who think, like, Snake Eye is tier 0. Like, if you play during tier limit format, think back to that meta. And it's pretty easy to see that Snake Eye is not nearly as dominant now as tier limit was back then. Like, it's very obvious. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the ban list. But But what do you all have to say? Let's take a peek over here. Yeah, so I had this tweet here where I was like, hey, let me hear what you all have to say. And I thought there's some pretty interesting responses. I see one here from Starving Princess. Unicorn 2 is good. It's a card I think is totally unhealthy for Max C formats. The funny pen guy to 1 is also nice, that being the Form 5 Rainbow Edition. The list is not as impactful as I'd like, but has been certainly better than the last few. Yeah, I mean, we've seen quite a few relatively unimpactful Master Duel lists, but like, when I think about the meta, I'm like, how hard do they really even need to hit decks in the meta? Like, especially pre-Snake Eye, it's like, I think the meta in Master Duel is fine right now if Snake Eye gets hit a bit, when it does eventually. And I think especially pre-Snake Eye meta was, like, completely fine, so... But I think there is merit to Unicorn being especially good in metas with Maxi. I understand more Princess coming from, for sure. Oni Gurley. Oni says, 2 out of 10, I think this ban list is impactful enough while at the same time setting a bad precedence for what cards to ban. Counter cards like 5 Rainbow don't need to be the focus of the ban list, especially when the same ban list agrees that Super Heavy Samurai is a strong deck. Yeah, no, I definitely see where Oni's coming from here, for sure. It does seem like... I mean, yeah, if you could argue that 5 Rainbow Edition was the focus of the ban list when it was the only card being limited, for sure. Again, with Super Heavy Samurai being a strong deck, like, it is a strong deck, yes, but is it so strong in Master Duel that we needed to hit it harder than it was hit? I'm not convinced the answer to that question is yes, but I'm also not unconvinced that Soul Piercer to 1 is also, like I don't think that's necessarily wrong either. I think it's a pretty interesting situation that decks like Super Heavy Samurai and Mathmech and Monadium are in, where they're like very strong, but like with Snake Eye being as good as they are they as oppressive as that? You know, it's just interesting to think about, right? Hasher says, I don't get why we have to wait so long for the changes to be implemented. I mean, yeah, a little notice in advance makes sense, but 2 whole weeks. So I think not only do I agree with this, honestly, but it's wild that we get 2 weeks notice for ban lists, but not for, like, packs coming out. Like, I can tell you just as a whole, as a player, but especially as a content creator, if we actually got a 2-week notice of, I'm not even asking for the whole contents of the pack, just, like, tell us when the date is going to be, because they always wait until, like, 4 or 5 days out. Like, can we not know sooner, or can we know sooner than that, please? Like, for what reason are we not allowed to know sooner? They could even, like, slowly trickle out. Like, the way that leaks are done with Master Duel right now, why does Konami just do that with selection packs, right? Kind of tease, you know, maybe 1 or 2 cards a week leading up to it, what's going to be in it. Like, that seems like an obvious move to me. Same with, like, events. We don't really know what events are coming in until, like, less than a week beforehand. So, I don't know why we have to wait so long for that, but, like, yeah, Master Duel ban lists get put out so much far in advance. It's weird. It's wild. Let's see here. There was a couple of other ones. Let's see. I like Master Duel's limiting of Floodgates to miles better than TCG or Floodgates are running the formats. Never get addressed. This kind of bad besides like a principle, not hitting the best deck and only hitting consistency. I mean, yeah, like I understand again why people are frustrated that Snake Eye didn't really get hit, but at the same time, it's like I don't think it was realistic to expect it, right? Konami has very clearly demonstrated that they don't want to hit packs until they're out of the shop. Is that a good practice? That's a completely whole other argument in and of itself. But, yeah, no, I definitely don't expect to see Snake Eye getting hit here. I do agree that Master Duel being more aggressive with hitting Floodgates is definitely good. And they definitely do that because of the best of one meta, right? Like, I mean, we saw that when Master Duel first came out that, like, you know, having... like 3 of every Floodgate on top of Imperial Order and Vandes was definitely like not good for a best of one format at all. So yeah, no, I definitely agree with that notion for sure. Yeah, again, Seb, I don't disagree that the Snake Eye package does need to get hit, but again, I think that I would even be a little surprised if we saw major hits on the next list. I would expect it to be the one after that. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Again, I think that's another debate in and of itself. Let's see. Pacifist Rat. I don't dislike the ban list. Hit stun, kept everything else exact same. I like the current format. I think it's healthy. I honestly agree for the most part. I only have 3 dislikes. Gimmick Lock, Super Heavy Samurai, Hand Loop, and Calamity. Everything else is perfectly fine. Yeah, no, I think this is kind of what I was talking a little bit about earlier, where the most problematic variants of Super Heavy Samurai are also, like, not even the most optimal to play on ladder. That is to say FTKing or calamity locking or hand looping. So I think in that respect, we can hit those variants without having to hit Super Heavy Samurai really hard. Like, I think a lot of people want Soul Piercer to go to 1 or even worse to happen to Super Heavy Samurai so that they don't have to deal with the FTKs and stuff. But it's like, again, let's just ban Calamity and Dark Strike Fighter and all that kind of stuff, right? Gimmick Lock, I agree, even though that's not the optimal way to play Branded. It's like, yeah, I mean, if it creates non-game states, like, let's just ban Albion Sanctifier and be done with it, right? So I definitely agree with this notion, for sure. Possible for any Banlist to be good. Strong decks are in the store or will be supported in the future. Yep, 100%. That's definitely where Master Duel is at. Snake Eyes is new and I get it, but Lab needs to be hit, especially with the new support. The 2 semis have done nothing to it. It's just getting stronger. It literally just won the Duelist Cup. I kind of disagree that Lab needs to get hit. I don't think winning the Duelist Cup because we'll see as we look at the top 100 list that the one in first place is going to be a Lab list, right? From Ryan Yu. So I don't think that just because a deck wins a tournament, or again, in this case, a Duelist Cup, it has to get hit really hard. I think power level wise, Lab is completely fine right now. And I think that's also why they hit the Performance Power 5 Rainbow Magician, because, like, you know, as far as, like, what Labyrinth does in Engine, it's totally fine. And, like, I think even with the new, because we did have, what's her face? Arianas, I think, the Butler. She did get leaked for Master Duel relatively recently, but I don't think her coming out is going to rocket the deck to such a high power level that it'll just dominate everything else in the meta right now. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think that the 2 semi-limits beforehand were necessarily terrible. I don't think they were very necessary, but I think when it comes to ban lists, a lot of players have this idea that a deck needs to either be gutted or not be touched at all. And I think there is room for minor consistency hits. A lot of people treat minor consistency hits as invalid, but and a lot of the times they are used as substitutes for hits that could be more valid, sure. But for example, hitting the furniture pieces to 2, I think was actually a completely fine hit for Lab, and probably the best hit they could have received, because the deck wasn't so powerful that it needed to get gutted, but it could stand to be a little less consistent. I agree with that notion. So, I don't know, you know, again, a lot of people go, lol, semi-limits, Master Duel, lol, bad hit list, bad hits, bad list, bad hits, bad list, but I think reducing any kind of discussion down to its most basic meme is always doing it a disservice, and I think just because a card goes to 2, that doesn't mean it was a bad hit, inherently. So, that's kind of where I stand on Lab and all that stuff. Let's see. It's not terrible. While yes, Snake Eye is arguably one of the best decks in the format, we need to see some of the older problematics get a leash on them. Super Heavy and Samurai Cash have been some impressive decks and kind of deserve to have some restraints. I don't agree with this, honestly, the last sentence. I don't think Super Heavy Samurai and Cash are oppressive. I don't think they are. And if I think that, do I think they really need harsher hits? I don't think they do, actually. I don't think Cash even deserved Unicorn to 2. I think Unicorn to 2 was deserved because if it was played in other decks, but as far as Cash as a deck goes, like, I think it was totally fine. And even, like, pre-Snake Eye, like, again, I think Super Heavy Samurai and Cash were honestly fine in those metas. Yeah, no, it's my 2 cents there, I guess. Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to cover it for the Twitter thoughts there. Thank you everyone for sharing your opinions here. We'd definitely love to do this for more videos in the future as well. Let's take a look real quick at Untapped before we look at the top 100 decks for the Duelist Cup here. So, one new feature that Untapped has that I think is really, really cool is of the games that are played for a deck, Untapped will now tell you the win rate going first versus going second. Which is really, really sweet, and I've definitely spent a good portion of last week just like poring over a bunch of different decks and a bunch of different ranks and seeing what all the different going second versus going first win rates are. But I noticed it's pretty consistently, as you're seeing here across the board, 60 to 65% win rate for going first and about 45% win rate for going second. For, again, pretty much every single archetype here. As you can see, it's been very consistent across the board there, which makes sense. I mean, yeah. Definitely does show that you are a little bit disadvantaged going second, but it's definitely not impossible to win going second games either. So, as far as popularity and win rates, we have seen some massive shifts here, especially for Snake Eyes popularity. It skyrocketed back up to 25%. Last week it was at like 18.7, and now it's up to 25% in Diamond and Master. On top of that, we have also seen the win rate jump up as well. And I think I actually know the answer for this. I think that we have seen such a massive boost in the numbers as a whole, because if you look at the total number of games played between this week and last, it's also a huge jump. I think it's because a lot of people spent a lot of their time playing competitively in the Duelist Cup this season. So that would make sense to me as to why we're seeing, again, such drastic number shifts in such a short period of time. It is kind of wild to me that, like, now Snake Eye and Vanquish Soul are both at about 56%, and then the next best decks are coming in at 54.5%, roughly that level. That is a little wild to me, honestly. I do think that the massive shift there is pretty astounding. Again, though, I don't think that Snake Eye is a tier 0 deck. I have said that before, and I will definitely maintain that moving forward as well. All the other figures here are pretty much in line with what we've seen in the past, right? Yeah, no, I think that the Snake Eye is definitely the most significant change here in the tier list. I think Vanquish Soul did have a pretty nice boost in the win rate as well. But everything else, aside from those two decks, I think is about where it was before, except for some of the decks that fell a little bit in win rate. Like a lot of these Monadio Super Heavy Samurai Math Mech, we were seeing last week above Snake Eye with a higher win rate, but now going to push down a little bit as people are coming back to ranked ladder. And not only that, but I imagine also bringing their best deck to rank up quickly to Master. I mean, that's what I did. Brought Snake Eye to ladder through Diamond as quickly as possible, and make sure I got to Master before the end of the season. Wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people were doing that. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at those stats, definitely want to take a look at the top 100 decks from the Duelist Cup. Not all of them have been submitted just yet, but we are going to see the majority of them here. As I touched on before, Ryan, to you, congrats on getting global rank #1 with Labyrinth. Fairly standard looking lab build here. We got the Perform Pal 5 Rainbows, which is probably why that card got limited. So, I mean, that would of course make sense as well there. And to probably nobody's surprise, Snake Eye is going to be the next deck represented here. One thing I did notice here is that, and again, I think this is without exception, I mentioned this earlier, every single Snake Eye list is playing the Kashtira package here, which makes a lot of sense to me for Duelist Cup specifically, for a few reasons, right? One, this is the best package for baiting out removal, right? Particularly Ash Blossom, Valor, and Imperm, which Snake Eye is most notably and infamously weak against. Also allows you to go into the full Link extra deck, which I think for an event like the Duelist Cup will be better than the Synchro extra deck probably. Now, does this mean that the Synchro package with the Jet Synchron in the main, and the Formula, and the Baron, and the Borload, does that mean this build is bad? No. Are you going to hear people saying this build is bad? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can't wait until my next Snake Eyes deck profile when I feature the Synchros to get all of the comments that are like, it's obvious that the current best way to play Snake Eye is with Kashtira. And it's like, yeah, it's probably obvious to you now that you've seen these Duelist Cup results. There are a lot of people who are very reactionary as far as their takes on the meta go. But I think it's important to not just follow the crowd and be like, oh, every single list here played Kashtira, therefore that's the only way to play Snake Eye in Master Duel. But really evaluate like why it was played, right? I think that's going to prove to be far more fruitful. And as far as just like you know, making sure that we're keeping like a level head and knowledgeable. Just like staying knowledgeable. Again, like you don't want to be the one chasing the meta. You want to be the one staying ahead of it. But again, I can just see the comments now of people being like, you obviously should have been playing Kashtira. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure it's obviously to you now. But anyway, Super Heavy Samurai coming in global rank #4. This is, you know, we're gonna see a couple of these here, and that's why Wagon ended up getting semi-limited. I mean, again, makes sense for a best of one meta for sure. Another Snake Eye list, again with the Kashira package. All these lists pretty much are rocking the Veilers and Imperms. Also, a lot of them are playing the Baron de Fleur as their only synchro, which is a little interesting to me. Like, I would have expected to be Borreload, but Baron de Fleur as the only synchro without formula. I just wonder what the line is. Like, what situation are you making Baron? It's obviously just me not knowing this build as well as I should. I'll definitely be testing it moving forward here to see how I feel about it. Yep, here another list with the Kashira Snake Eye list there. Here's another lab deck. This one not even on the Perform Pal 5 Rainbow, but it is playing the Crimson Gaia package. Soul Resonator being able to search up the furniture. Makes sense, and it's also something I've seen on ladder myself. It seems pretty good here. I have a few people who are on a few different builds here. This person in particular playing Super Heavy Samurai and Perform Pal 5 Rainbow in lab, and Kashira Unicorn and Snake Eye. Pretty much the epitome of what ended up getting hit on the ban list here, right? We're seeing across these 3 decks here. Here's another person, RJ, who was on a few different decks. Again, we have the Snake Eye playing the Kashira package. We got some tier limit action going on, as well as Vanquish Souls as well. Another tier limit deck here for global rank number 11. Pretty standard looking list there. More Super Heavy Samurai. I've noticed that the Gauntlet is becoming quite commonplace. This card's art is also in a very unfortunate pose. They really should have just angled it down a little bit more. I always think that every time I see this card, I'm always like, ooh, that does not look good. But anyway, yeah, no, Gauntlet pretty quickly seems like it's becoming one of the new hot techs for Super Heavy Samurai. Even before the Duelist Cup, in a lot of tournament decks, I was seeing this card starting to get used in Super Heavy Samurai there, so... ooh, here's a branded Snake Eye list that is also still rocking the Kashira Unicorns there. Finally, our first branded list in global rank 16 here. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard looking list, not even playing the Perform Pal 5 Rainbow. It's funny how they hit Perform Pal 5 Rainbow when it's not even in the majority of lab lists that we've seen so far. Here's another one here. Although I have noticed that the majority of lab lists have been on the Floodgates, which kind of makes sense to me, yeah. See how that would definitely be good there. Another lab list with Floodgates, but without the 5 Rainbow. Here's 2 lab lists that neither of which are playing the 5 Rainbow. They really hit 5 Rainbow just because of Ryan Yu. Wow, that's kind of wild to me. But, I mean, I don't know. I'm not particularly sad about seeing that card going. This deck is sick. This is a sweet deck. I saw this earlier. It's Super Heavy Samurai Synchron, which is definitely, I think, really, really cool. To see this deck get global rank 22 also in the Duelist Cup, like, I've talked about this so many times before, but, like, I can see so many situations where somebody would post a list like that and get feedback, and people would scoff at them and be like, you really want to bring a list like this to the Duelist Cup? It's so unoptimized. Like, come on. Just play a pure Super Heavy Samurai build. So many people would give a comment like this. But this deck still got global rank 22. That's insanely good. That is insanely good. Do not let your dreams stay dreams. If you want to build the deck, build the deck. And don't let naysayers who only think the most optimal build is the only valid one bring you down. Because they're wrong. You can definitely do well cooking up cool shit like this. I love decks like this. I love to see it. Alright, here is another Snake Eye with the Kashira package here. No Fenrir in this one. More Super Heavy Samurai here. There were more Super Heavy Samurai lists than I remembered, actually, to be fair. Another Kashira Snake Eye list. Again, every Snake Eye list that we're seeing here is Kashira. But that doesn't mean this is the only good way to play Snake Eye. Again, accue all the people who are going to be like to every list playing the synchro build or any amount of synchros and moving forward, like, you're playing the deck inoptimally, you're playing the deck inoptimally. But no, don't let people like that get you down. Again, people who conflate the only good decks are the optimal builds are just being closed-minded and closing themselves off from considering more options, really. Here's another lab list, again, without Perform Pal 5 Rainbow. We're seeing the vast majority of the lab list not having that card, but it still got hit, funnily enough. But also, like, again, does anything else from lab need to get hit? I think the answer is no, honestly. I really don't think it does. This person. Love this person here. They're playing a couple of different Tri-Sprite lists, which is really, really cool to see. We always see someone sneak in with Tri-Sprite. It might even be the same person. Looks like they used some Vanquish Soul Snake Eye action for a bit of their run here as well. Adagnister, again, a lot of people would say don't ever bring a deck like Adagnister to a Duelist Cup. You're not going to do well. This person got global rank 40. I think finishing within the top 100 is like such a huge achievement in and of itself that like, and again, there are a lot of people who would like not consider this to be an achievement because they did it with Adagnister, and it's like, how close-minded do you have to be, Jesus? Lyralisk, again, Tri-Brigade Lyralisk, boom, another deck that like I'm sure a ton of people would be like, it's bad, don't play it, and here it is. Doing very well in the one of the most competitive modes of Master Duel. So, like, yeah, wild. Here is a branded list here. Looking relatively standard. More Kashira Snake Eye. We got more Kashira Snake Eye. More Super Heavy Samurai here. This one rocking a small Machina engine there. More Lab without the 5 rainbow. Here is Runic Stun, the one and only, I think from what I recall, stun list that's actually posted here. I'm playing a playset of Wall Revealing Light, playing a playset of Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, playing a playset of Grave of the Ancient Superorganism. God, some players will, they'll go for any floodgate, won't they? Wall of Revealing Light! A playset of Wall of Revealing Light in the year of our Lord 2024. That is, wild to see. Kind of cool in its own way, though. Okay, we have another pretty standard looking branded list here. Snake Eye again with the Kashira package. Vanquish Soul here. Mathmech, seeing our first Mathmech list here. A Rockin' Singularity and the Firewalls. It's actually not too dissimilar from a lot of builds I've played. So, I mean, yeah, I think the Firewalls and the Singularity is definitely the way to go for best of one for Mathmech. Not that I think Microcoder is bad, and I also think builds without them can do well, but I think that in my opinion, I am of the opinion that optimal Mathmech builds do play the Firewall package. I think Singularity is more optional, but I do think that Firewall does end up being optimal. I've also, because I actually had a comment that was asking me about this, of like, do you think that Firewall package is good in Mathmech, even though you have to play a dead card? I don't think of Firewall Guardian as a dead card. There's a lot of hands where this can lead you to plays by opening it with an extender, so I don't think that card is bad to open, no. Mikanko. Wow, 40 card Mikanko list sneaking in here. That's kind of wild because a lot of Mikanko lists I've seen lately have been on 60 cards, but... Oh, I meant to look and see how many of these lab decks were on the Deer Servant. Shoot, I should have been keeping an eye out for that. I don't want to scroll back up through all those and go through them now. Another Adagnister list! 2 Adagnister! That is the second one, right? Yeah, because it's the Mikanko list. So cool to see. I've maintained that if everyone had I Wish I Was Dead's brain downloaded into theirs, like, this would be a solid tier 2 or 3 deck. Like, it would definitely be much more played. This person's got a couple of different variants of their Snake Eye list. I see one's got Nib and the other doesn't. Both do, again, have the Kashira package. Another person was on a few different decks. One of them was Snake Eye with Cash, one of them was Lab without 5 Rainbow, and then one was Tear Lament. Pretty standard looking pure list there. More Super Heavy Samurai action going on here. Another Lab without... Wait, really was just those like 3... We've seen like 3 builds that even played the 5 Rainbow. It's kind of wild that they actually limited that card. The more I'm seeing it, the more I'm like, wow, I definitely didn't need it at all, actually. Kashira. This is like the first time we've seen Kashira at all, coming in at rank 85. Again, people saying Kashira is oppressive, but like we've seen multiple Adagnister lists before seeing any amount of Kashira, and this is the deck that's supposed to be like the meta killer right now. It's like, I think this deck is totally fine. Doesn't need to get hit anymore. They also played a little bit of Super Heavy Samurai as well. The FTK build looks like, or some out of an FTK build. Oh, the Calamity Lock build, I see. I was just like, what is this spell? Synchro Rumble. Target a tuner or level 7 or 8 dragon monster to give it some special summon it. Can't special summon except for synchros. You control beast for a battle, you can banish this card or effect. I wonder if that's part of a specific combo line. Because I see we're also running Satellite Warrior. It's interesting. Okay. Here we go. Here's our first branded list that's playing 5 Rainbow Magician. Otherwise looking like a fairly standard list overall. Again, there was actually more Super Heavy Samurai than I remembered seeing before in the Duelist Cup here. Another pure Cashier, again, not down here till 92, though. Are we finally seeing our second one after 85? Was the place for the first one there. More Super V Sam. Another Snake Eye list with Kashira. And that'll do it. So, yeah, wow. It's a pretty interesting Duelist Cup. I do think it is pretty interesting, again, that every single Snake Eye list was on the Kashira package. Does that mean it's the only good way to play the deck? No. A lot of people are going to start saying that now, but don't listen to them because they're just following trends. They're just chasing trends, right? I think part of being a truly competitive cut above the rest duelist is recognizing why trends happen and staying ahead of them as a result. So that's going to do it for this week in Master Duel. It was a really big one. Thank you all for watching. Let's move now to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for support there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.